Well, President Obama boldly stated this week he would have beaten President-elect Trump if he ran for a third term, even though Americans soundly rejected his policies. Even some on his own side are stating the obvious. The president is to blame for not only Hillary Clinton's loss, but for destroying his Democratic Party. Here's an editor at the far left, Huffington Post.
You look at the destruction of the Democratic Party under Barack Obama's leadership, and you have to wonder, what was the political, what were the electoral benefits that he gave to the party? He leaves them in a much worse position. The states are decimated. They've lost control of the House and the Senate. The governorships are decimated. So yeah, maybe he is obviously a gifted candidate. He did win election twice by substantial margins. But his legacy as a politician is a bit muddied by all that.
So, Richard, my first question goes to you. Is winning the White House twice with President Obama worth losing 1,000 seats across the country and putting 33 Republicans in charge of governor's mansions across the country?
Oh, you're putting me on the hot seat.
We need some answers about how you're going to rebuild the party.
Oh, well, I think every party goes through its times and transitions. I think, the Republican Party was sort of decimated when we won in 2008, and we're going to have to rebuild. But I think that's a far stretch to say that this president hasn't done a lot to move this country forward. Not only do we have 72 consecutive months of job growth, but according to Gallup, the president has a 56% approval rating, which is one of the highest that we've seen in recent history. When George Bush left the White House, he had a 31% approval rating. The only person that beats Barack Obama is Ronald Reagan, with 63% approval rating. He can't run for a third term. That's very obvious. But I do believe that you cannot blame Hillary's loss on the president. Hillary didn't do a good enough job of selling her message to the American people.
Sure. Yeah, we agree with that.
How do you explain President Obama, who was probably Hillary's greatest advocate, surrogate on the campaign trail? Maybe his wife, Michelle, was the greatest one. What happens when he says, vote for Hillary is a vote for my legacy, and then I don't think
people believed him. I don't think voters believed him. I mean, you look at all those people who said, I voted for Obama twice, and then after voting for Obama twice, they voted for Donald Trump.
Is the current core Democratic ideology platform still intact? Do you want to push this forward the next 4 or 8 years?
Oh, absolutely.
Or do you have to do a quote-unquote autopsy, which the Republicans did 8 years ago?
No, I think the reason why we lost this election is because we didn't have a convincing narrative for working-class Americans. And I think we've got to go back to those roots.
But you were sure of it up until November 8th, November 7th, you guys were sure of it.
Candidates who ran on that type of message won their re-election.
No.
Right?
Well, Kimberly,
I'll tell you this. He said that he wanted to be a transformative figure in American politics, and he certainly was. He wanted to be transformative like Reagan. And other than Reagan, nobody did more to put conservatives and Republicans in office and back in the White House than President Obama. I mean, that's the result. He might have been able to move his own numbers and tick it up in terms of favorability, but the Democratic Party is left in complete ruin because it was more about this president than it was about the party.
Well, and Tom, they have a lot of rebuilding to do over at the DNC. They have their own civil war going on. How do you think that they're going to be able to move forward since they've devastated their bench, not in D.C. necessarily, but across the country?
Well, one thing they have to realize, I'm glad Richard made that point, is that approval rating is meaningless. It doesn't mean anything because President Obama, his approval rating is going to continue to be high. It's going to go sky high after he's out of office. I predict, let's go into the future, that President Trump will be reelected with the lowest approval rating in history. Again, proving my point that approval rating, it doesn't mean anything. Right. Personally, people think, oh, President Obama, he's a great guy. But they don't agree with his policies. Right. And so that's why Democrats lose.
I think here's the thing. One thing that we saw from the Clinton administration, right, what Bill Clinton did very well is he sold small things as big things, right? So when he gave out free lunch, which is a small thing in the grand scheme of things, he sold it as a big thing. This president did a lot of small things and was not good enough, and he said it himself, at selling it. For example, I'm being very real. The one bill that I always tone to is the credit card bill of rights. Your credit card bill now comes on the same day every month. Before, that didn't happen.
Okay.
They have to
We're getting in the weeds here on the topics
that's an everyday working man issue. When you sit at the kitchen table,
it is a working man issue.
It absolutely is.
Really is substantially higher than that. Not money, wages.
And we listen. We've been fighting you guys tooth and nail on wages.
Wages have been stagnant for a decade. Now, I'm not saying only Obama,
let's raise the minimum wage.
George Bush and President Obama, wages haven't budged in 10 years. Finally starting to tick up.
Well, let's move on to our next topic with the transition because President Obama's term is over, and Trump is coming in just a couple weeks here. And right now, it's a bit hard to tell if Mr. Obama and President-elect Trump are getting along. But yesterday, Mr. Trump put out a tweet saying he's doing his best to disregard the many inflammatory statements and roadblocks from the president. He thought it was going to be a smooth transition and then wrote not. But later in the day, he appeared outside his home in Florida and said the transition was going smoothly and that the president phoned him and had a very nice conversation. So, Kimberly, we see these two guys kind of poking each other's egos a little bit, but as we've heard, the transition level at the staff is actually going pretty well.
Yeah, the transition process, I think, is going very well. He's ahead of the game by all accounts in terms of past presidents and putting people in important positions. So I think that's going very well. I think they're looking forward to these next 3 weeks happening and going by very quickly, because it seems that, unfortunately, President Obama is having a hard time letting go of the strings. He's like still trying to control, make moves, do a lot of things right before he goes out. And you see President Trump, who people were saying, I wonder if he can be presidential. Well, he's showing that he can be presidential because, well, he's not responding back or doing anything today or making any kind of comments, given the developments of what's happening with Russia. He's biding his time and
Richard,
waiting.
why would Obama say something like, I would have beat Trump in a third term? Why would he say that?
I think it was very tongue-in-cheek because it can't happen. But with that being said, I mean, it was tongue-in-cheek, but it can't happen, right? Because he can't run for a third term. But I think beyond that point, I think there's something to be said about the Donald Trump Twitter account, which we'll be talking about for the next 4 years. You can't say consumer confidence is up. Thanks, Donald. I mean, that's not presidential.
It is now.
The highest it's been in 15 years.
President Obama's thanks Obama line that he kept throwing out there. Thanks.
Well, the reason why consumer confidence is high is because for 8 years the president has been working on fixing this economy.
You lost 1,000 seats. We're gonna
Hey, listen, but we created 72 consecutive months of job growth.
Stop. 1 second. There are fewer Americans working today than there were when President Obama took over.
Correct.
Period.
And
there was a 10% unemployment rate when President Obama took over. Actually higher than that. Now it's at 4%.
91 million people left the workforce.
4%.
I think that Tom, what do you have to say about Obama being the legacy behind the new economic bump that we're seeing?
Well, listen, I don't care what day my credit card statement comes. I just want more money so I can pay it.
Right.
Exactly. A lot of people do care, Tom.
Especially after buying.
Well, we'll give him that one amazing accomplishment.
There's more than just one.
Hey, your credit card bill comes on the same day.
And more people are defaulting on them than ever before. But at least we get the bill on the right day.
Have lots
by the way,
of
there's terror happening in San Bernardino. Your credit card bill.
Okay, moving on. All right, ahead. It's going to be a speech for the history books. President-elect Trump's already begun working on his inaugural address, and he reportedly told friends he's drawing inspiration from 2 former presidents. Find out which ones next.
I know.